My name is Michael Carter, and I'm 45 years old. For 6 years, I was the backbone of international expansion at Harrison Tech Solutions. While my colleagues shuffled papers in Manhattan offices, I was closing multi-million-dollar deals in Singapore, negotiating partnerships in Sao Paulo, and building relationships that would define our company's future. I wasn't just another corporate suit. I was the guy who understood that business is built on trust, consistency, and showing up when it matters. My clients didn't just buy our cloud-based logistics solutions. They bought into me. They knew that when Michael Carter shook hands on a deal, it was as solid as a signed contract. 6 years of 14-hour days, 6 years of missing family dinners to take calls from Tokyo at midnight, 6 years of turning a domestic company into a global powerhouse with revenues exceeding $250 million annually. And on February 18th, 2024, all of that dedication would be repaid in the most humiliating way imaginable. I was in Dubai, representing Harrison Tech at the Global Innovation Summit, the kind of event where tech leaders from around the world gather to celebrate breakthrough achievements. The Burj Al Arab's golden glow reflected off the Persian Gulf as I adjusted my Navy Brooks Brothers suit in the mirror. This wasn't just another business trip. Our AI-enhanced supply chain platform had been nominated for the Excellence in Enterprise Solutions Award, and I was there to accept it on behalf of the company. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had personally secured 4 of the major client implementations that made this nomination possible. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. The gala dinner was everything you'd expect from a 5-star Dubai venue. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across tables adorned with white orchids. The who's who of international tech sat in tailored suits and designer gowns, discussing everything from blockchain innovations to the latest AI breakthroughs. I found myself at table 7, strategically positioned near the stage. To my left sat Khalid Al-Mansour, the billionaire CEO of Crescent Digital, our biggest competitor in the Middle East market. We'd never met in person, but his reputation preceded him. Sharp, calculating, and known for turning his competitors' weaknesses into his own advantages. "Mr. Carter," he said, extending a firm handshake, "I've heard impressive things about Harrison Tech's expansion under your leadership." "Mr. Al-Mansour," I replied, "the feeling is mutual. Crescent Digital's growth in the region has been remarkable. We were competitors, but there was mutual respect. In our business, you recognize quality when you see it." The evening progressed smoothly. Awards were presented, speeches were made, and I networked with potential clients over champagne and conversation. At 9:47 p.m. Dubai time, 1:47 p.m. back in New York, my phone buzzed with a text message. I almost ignored it. Almost. The sender was Richard Harrison himself, our CEO, and a man who'd hired me 6 years earlier. I expected maybe a congratulatory message about the event or a reminder about some Monday morning meeting. Instead, I read 8 words that would change everything. "Effective immediately. Your employment is terminated. HR will contact you." I read again, then a third time. No explanation, no phone call, no thank you for 6 years of dedicated service. Just a cold, corporate text message delivered while I sat in a room full of industry leaders, representing the very company that was discarding me like yesterday's coffee. The champagne suddenly tasted bitter in my mouth. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. The noise of the gala, clinking glasses, polite laughter, the keynote speaker discussing digital transformation, faded into white noise. My first instinct was to call Harrison immediately, demand an explanation, maybe even cause a scene. But I didn't. 6 years in international business teaches you something valuable. Never react when you're emotional. Never show your cards when you don't understand the game being played. I slipped the phone back into my jacket pocket and took a measured sip of champagne. "Everything all right?" Khalid asked, noting my momentary distraction. "Just business back home," I replied smoothly. "Nothing that can't wait until tomorrow." It was a lie, but a necessary one. I needed time to think, to process what had just happened. The termination text felt surreal, like receiving news of your own death while very much alive and breathing. As the evening continued, fragments of conversations drifted past me. A German executive discussing supply chain optimization, two women from a Finnish startup debating venture capital trends. All of it felt distant, like watching a movie with the sound turned low. Then my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Emily from HR, a 26-year-old MBA graduate who'd started 18 months after me, but somehow now held the authority to manage my termination. "Hi, Michael. I know this is unexpected. Richard asked me to handle the transition. Your company credit card will be deactivated by midnight EST. Please arrange your own flight home and submit receipts for reimbursement. Your final paycheck will reflect unused vacation days, minus the recovery of any company equipment. All client contacts and proprietary information remain confidential per your original agreement. Let me know if you have questions." The clinical coldness of it was almost impressive. 6 years reduced to a checklist of administrative tasks. No mention of my contributions, my sacrifices, or even basic human decency. Just corporate damage control delivered through a 26-year-old who probably made $68,000 a year. I looked around the room at executives who'd built empires, entrepreneurs who'd changed industries, leaders who understood the value of loyalty and strategic thinking. Then I looked at my phone again, at messages from a man who'd thrown away his most valuable asset via text message while I was representing his company at an international event. That's when clarity hit me like Dubai's desert sun. This wasn't just about me being fired. This was about Richard Harrison making the stupidest business decision of his career at the worst possible moment, in the worst possible way. And he had no idea what he'd just set in motion. "Mr. Almansour," I said, turning to face the billionaire beside me, "I'd like to share something with you, something I think you'll find very interesting from a business perspective." Khalid set down his wine glass and gave me his full attention. In our industry, when a senior executive says they have something very interesting to share, you listen. 30 minutes ago, I received a text message. I began, keeping my voice steady and professional. I was just terminated from Harrison Tech via text, while sitting here representing the company at this event. Khalid's eyebrows rose slightly. "That's highly unusual." "It gets better," I continued. "No prior warning, no discussion, no transition plan, just a corporate message followed by HR instructions to find my own way home." I showed him messages on my phone. Khalid read them carefully, his expression shifting from surprise to something that looked like predatory interest. "May I ask why?" he said. "I honestly don't know," I replied. "But I have a theory. Richard's nephew, Ethan, graduated from Wharton in 2023. He's been shadowing various departments for 10 months, learning the business. I suspect this termination has more to do with nepotism than performance." Khalid leaned back in his chair, studying me with the calculating gaze of a man who'd built a billion-dollar empire by recognizing opportunities when they presented themselves. "Tell me about your client relationships," he said quietly. "Confidential, naturally," I replied. "But I can tell you that Harrison Tech's Middle East revenue grew from 0 to $38 million during my tenure. Most of those clients have personal relationships with me, not the company. And Harrison's leadership believes these relationships will transfer seamlessly to—" I paused. "Ethan, apparently." Khalid smiled. Not the polite social smile he'd worn all evening, but the sharp, calculating expression of a shark who just smelled blood in the water. "Mr. Carter," he said, "I think we should continue this conversation tomorrow. Are you free for lunch?" I was unemployed as of 30 minutes ago. My schedule was completely open. "I'd be delighted," I replied. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced networking and careful conversations. I accepted congratulations for awards I might never see, shook hands with colleagues who didn't yet know I'd been cast out, and maintained the professional demeanor that had served me well for 6 years. But underneath the surface, something had shifted. The humiliation was transforming into something else, something cold, strategic, and infinitely more dangerous than wounded pride. Richard Harrison had just made the mistake of his career. He discarded his most valuable asset at the worst possible moment, in front of the worst possible person. And tomorrow, I would begin showing him exactly how expensive that mistake would become. The next morning, February 19th, I woke up in my suite at the Atlantis with a strange sense of calm. My company credit card had been deactivated as promised, but I'd transferred enough personal funds to cover my extended stay. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to check emails or prepare for morning calls with New York. Instead, I ordered room service, shakshuka, and Arabic coffee, and began making a list. Not a list of grievances or emotional rants, but strategic assessment of Harrison Tech's vulnerabilities. 6 years of building their international presence had given me an intimate understanding of every weakness in their armor. At noon, I met Khalid at Nusri Tea at Atlantis The Palm. The restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the Arabian Gulf, but Khalid's attention was focused entirely on our conversation. "I've been thinking about our discussion last night," he began after we'd ordered. "Your situation presents some interesting possibilities." "I'm listening," I replied. "Harrison Tech's Middle East operation relies heavily on personal relationships, correct?" I nodded. "In this region, business is built on trust and consistency. Clients don't just buy software, they buy into the people behind it. And these clients have contracts with Harrison Tech, not with you personally." "That's correct. But contracts have renewal dates, performance clauses, and termination conditions. Most of our major clients are on 2-year agreements that come up for renewal between now and December." Khalid smiled. "Tell me about the renewal process." "Standard procedure is, or was, that I would begin renewal discussions 120 days in advance, build value, address concerns, negotiate terms. I let the implication hang in the air. Without that relationship management, they're vulnerable, extremely vulnerable. And Richard just eliminated their only insurance policy in this market." Khalid leaned forward. "What would you say to joining Crescent Digital as our new Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Western markets?" I had expected this offer, but hearing it aloud still carried weight. What exactly would that position entail? Leading our expansion into North American and European markets, developing client relationships, building the kind of international presence that Harrison Tech thought they had. He paused. "The salary would be $400,000 annually, plus equity participation and performance bonuses." My Harrison Tech salary had been $280,000. This wasn't just an offer, it was a statement. "There's something else," Khalid continued. "I want you to start immediately, as in tomorrow, before you return to New York." "Why return to New York?" "Your expertise is most valuable here, where you understand both markets. We'll handle your relocation, visa arrangements, everything." The strategy was becoming clear. While Harrison Tech scrambled to figure out their Middle East operations without me, I'd be building competitive relationships from inside their most important emerging market. It was elegant, legal, and devastating. "I accept," I said. That afternoon, I began my new role with a series of carefully planned calls. Not to Harrison Tech's clients, that would have been unethical and potentially illegal, but to industry contacts, suppliers, and partners who work with multiple companies in our space. "Hi, this is Michael Carter." I'd begin each call. "I wanted to let you know I've joined Crescent Digital as Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm looking forward to exploring new collaboration opportunities. Word travels fast in specialized industries." By Thursday, February 21st, 3 different contacts had called me back with interesting information. "Heard Harrison Tech is having some transition challenges in the Middle East," one supplier mentioned casually. "Ethan Harrison called yesterday, asking about compliance requirements," another said. "Seemed unfamiliar with the regional regulations." "Your replacement reached out about the Dubai implementation," a third contact reported. "Nice kid, but he didn't understand the technical specifications." I didn't ask for this information. I didn't solicit complaints about Harrison Tech. I simply existed in my new role, and the industry's gossip network delivered intelligence about my former employer's struggles. By Friday, February 22nd, the picture was becoming clear. Harrison Tech was scrambling. Ethan, Richard's nephew, had been thrown into deep water without swimming lessons. Client calls were being mishandled, technical questions were going unanswered, and renewal discussions were being delayed or avoided entirely. Meanwhile, I was settling into Crescent Digital's Dubai office, learning their systems, and building relationships with my new colleagues. Khalid had been right. My expertise was perfectly positioned to help them compete more effectively in Western markets. On Sunday, February 24th, exactly 1 week after my termination, my former assistant, Lauren, called me. She'd been with Harrison Tech for 9 years and had worked directly with me for the last 4. "Michael, I hope you don't mind me calling," she said. "I got a number from your LinkedIn update." "Of course not, Lauren. How are things?" "Honestly, chaotic. Ethan is trying his best, but he's in over his head. Richard is asking why clients aren't returning calls. The Bahrain project has stalled because no one understands the compliance requirements." "That's unfortunate," I replied neutrally. "There's more. For clients have asked specifically about you. When they learned you were no longer with the company, they requested immediate meetings to discuss their options." I felt a cold satisfaction, but kept my voice professional. "I'm sure Ethan will find his footing." "Maybe," Lauren said. "But Michael, I've been thinking about my own situation too. This place isn't the same without proper leadership." The conversation lasted another 10 minutes. Lauren wasn't the only long-term employee reconsidering her future with Harrison Tech. When leadership makes impulsive decisions, it creates ripple effects throughout the organization. After we hung up, I sat in my new Dubai office, watching the sunset paint the Burj Khalifa in shades of gold. Richard Harrison had fired me via text, thinking he was eliminating a costly employee to make room for his nephew. Instead, he'd armed his biggest competitor with inside knowledge, damaged relationships with major clients, and destabilized his own organization, all while I built a new career in one of the world's most dynamic tech markets. The revenge was writing itself. I didn't need to sabotage anything or break any rules. I just had to be excellent at my new job while Harrison Tech discovered what they'd actually lost. And they were discovering it faster than I'd expected. 3 weeks into my new position at Crescent Digital, in early March, I began hearing concerning reports through industry channels. It started with a call from Omar Khalil, CEO of Gulf Logistics Solutions, Harrison Tech's largest Middle East client, with a contract worth $12 million annually. I'd personally negotiated their implementation 2 years earlier, and we'd built a strong working relationship. "Michael, I heard you've moved to Crescent Digital," Omar said during what appeared to be a casual check-in call. "That's correct. I'm excited about the new opportunities here." "I'm glad to hear it. We've been having some concerns about our current service provider. The new contact doesn't seem to understand our regional requirements, and response times have increased significantly." I listened carefully, offering no criticism of Harrison Tech, but asking thoughtful questions about Gulf Logistics' current needs and future expansion plans. By the end of the call, Omar had requested a proposal for migrating their operations to Crescent Digital's platform. "We value consistency and expertise," he said. "Those qualities seem to have followed you to your new position." 2 days later, Elena Petrova from Black Sea Shipping called with a similar message. Then James Park from Asia Pacific Manufacturing. Then Carlos Mendez from Latin American Trade Solutions. The pattern became clear over the following weeks. Harrison Tech's service quality had declined noticeably since my departure. Clients were frustrated with the lack of expertise, and they were actively exploring alternatives. I didn't poach these clients. They came looking for the level of service they'd grown accustomed to. Meanwhile, Lauren provided periodic updates on Harrison Tech's internal situation, not through any espionage or unethical behavior, but as a concerned employee venting to a former colleague. "Richard is getting worried," she told me during one of our calls in late March. "2 major clients have given notice that they're considering other options. Ethan doesn't understand why. And Richard keeps asking what you did to turn them against the company." "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that you didn't do anything to them. You just did everything for them, and now that's gone." The most telling moment came in early April. Richard Harrison himself called me. After 6 years of working together, after firing me via text, he was now reaching out personally. "Michael," he began, his voice carrying a forced casualness that fooled no one. "I hope there are no hard feelings about how things ended. Business decisions, you understand?" "Of course, Richard. I wish you and Ethan the best." I'm calling because some of our Middle East clients seem to be experiencing transition difficulties. I thought maybe you could help smooth things over. Maybe take a consulting role to ensure continuity. The audacity was breathtaking. Fire me by text, then ask me to fix the problems created by that decision. I appreciate the offer, I replied, but I'm fully committed to my new role at Crescent Digital. I'm sure Ethan will find his way. Right? Well, if you change your mind, we could discuss very competitive compensation. I almost laughed. I'm quite happy where I am, Richard, but thank you for thinking of me. The call lasted 3 more minutes of awkward pleasantries. When we hung up, I realized Richard finally understood what he'd lost. Unfortunately for him, that understanding had come about 7 weeks too late. By April, the situation had become serious. Through Lauren's updates and industry feedback, it was clear that Harrison Tech was struggling significantly in the Middle East market. The lack of regional expertise was showing, and several major clients were openly discussing alternatives. Meanwhile, Crescent Digital's Western expansion was exceeding all projections. We'd secured 3 major North American contracts, expanded into the European market, and established partnerships that positioned us for significant growth. Khalid had been right. My expertise was perfectly positioned to help them compete globally. The final chapter came in late July 2024, almost exactly 5 months after my text message termination. Lauren called with news that Harrison Tech was being acquired by a German consortium for approximately 70% of its market value 6 months earlier. Richard is staying on as a regional manager, she said. Most of the senior staff are being let go as redundant. I've already accepted a position with another company. I'm sorry to hear that, Lauren, but I'm glad you landed somewhere good. It's actually exciting. Better opportunity, better leadership. Sometimes, losing what you think is security opens doors to something much better. She was describing my experience perfectly. That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony in Dubai Marina, watching the city's lights reflect off the water. The last 5 months had been a masterclass in unintended consequences. Richard Harrison had made one impulsive decision, firing a loyal employee via text to make room for nepotism. And that single choice had triggered a cascade of events that ultimately destroyed his company's independence. I hadn't orchestrated his downfall. I hadn't sabotaged anything or violated any agreements. I'd simply continued being excellent at what I did in a new environment that valued that excellence. The revenge had been poetic in its simplicity. I'd succeeded while he failed, and his failure was entirely self-inflicted. My phone buzzed with a text from Khalid. Board approved your promotion to VP of Global Expansion. Congratulations, well deserved. I smiled and typed back, thank you. Looking forward to the new challenges. 5 months earlier, I'd been humiliated in a room full of industry leaders. Tonight, I was a vice president at one of the fastest growing tech companies in the Middle East, living in one of the most dynamic cities on earth, with equity stakes that were worth more than I'd ever imagined possible. Richard Harrison had taught me an invaluable lesson. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply letting incompetent people destroy themselves while you build something better. The experience had shown me that loyalty, expertise, and professionalism aren't just personal values. They're the foundation of sustainable success. When leadership abandons those principles, the consequences are inevitable. And sometimes, those consequences write the perfect ending to someone else's story of redemption. If you enjoyed this story, like this video and leave a comment telling us what you thought. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to receive alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.